And tonight, the military junta in the Republic of Niger is calling on the Republic of Togo to act as a mediator in its negotiations with the international community as pressure mounts on the West African country to deliver prosperity to its people, who assess the implications of this latest diplomatic move and how that can contribute to stabilizing the West Africa sub-region, and why more African countries moving to open their borders. We have a reaction on this latest wave of announcements of visa-free regimes for all African descent in some countries within East Africa. You're watching Connect Africa with me, Blessed Sugai, and thanks for being my guest. We have a wrap, first of all the major news content making rounds across the continent.
Minister has described how she was robbed at gunpoint after her vehicle stopped on a highway to change a bus tire. Sindiswe Chukunga told a parliamentary committee that one of the masked attackers pointed a gun at her head during the ordeal early on Monday, where they stole some laptops, a phone, and her bodyguard's weapons. A fire at the Canadian High Commission in Nigeria's capital has killed 2 people and injured 2 others. According to spokeswoman for the State Emergency Management Agency in Abuja, Nkechi Issa, the fire broke out in the morning while workers were servicing generators. Libyan Interior Minister Ahmed Trabelsi has announced that the North African country deported over 250 undocumented migrants from sub-Saharan African nations and Asia to their respective countries. The North African neighbors on August 10th agreed to share responsibility for providing shelter for hundreds of migrants stranded at their border, ending a month-long crisis triggered by mass expulsions of migrants by Tunis. The territorial dispute between Ethiopia's northern Amhara and Tigray regions will be settled through a referendum, the government says. The row has threatened to disrupt the fragile peace following the end of the civil war in Tigray a year ago.
And now, the military regime in the Republic of Niger is asking the President of the Republic of Togo, Faure Gnassingbé, to act as, quote, a mediator in its negotiations with the international community. The French West African country is currently under severe economic sanctions owing to the coup d'etat on July 26, which deposed democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. For days now, Niger has been in a diplomatic row with its colonial power, France, and is asking the French troops in the country to leave. During his visit to Ghana a couple of days ago, Joseph Borrell Fontes, who happens to be the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security, says that French forces were not going to stay there by force. However, the West says that it maintains its position on the matter, asking for the reinstatement of deposed President Mohamed Bazoum.
About the situation in Sahel, first, the retreat of Africa and from Sahel, from Niger, not Sahel, Niger, of the French troops. France was there, as it has been first in Mali, at the request of their government. France and other European Union members went there to support democratically elected governments who asked for support. Now there is a military regime that we don't recognize, but is in power, and request that the French troops to leave. You can understand that the French troops cannot stay by force. This embassy, but we cannot go into a war. We cannot use force. If they don't want the French troops to be there, French troops will leave. And certainly it will not support the fight against terrorism. I wonder who is going to take their place. The Russian mercenaries? Well, in this case, I can assure you that the security will not increase, but decrease. But this is our position. We are studying what to do with the other military presence of the European Union in the Sahel region. We are not combat troops, but training troops. But still, to train whom and for what? So we are studying carefully which will be the common position of the European Union member states. We also regret that MINUSMA has been asked to leave Mali. It's certainly not a good idea. And the people of Mali will pay the consequences of withdrawing the United Nations troops. But the French forces cannot stay in Niger against the strong position of the military junta. And once again, it's very important that President Bazoum be released. And it has to do, I think I answered the two questions about the situation in Sahel. How much are we worried? Worried a lot. We are studying which is going to be our answer. How do we maintain our presence? To increase for which reasons? But the most important reason for us is the stability, peace and prosperity of the people of Sahel. For that we were there, and it is the only reason for us to stay there. Yes, we have engaged a figure of 620 millions for military support for the whole region.
Well, the EU position on the matter there, but in a move widely considered to be a move to reduce the effects of the severe sanctions, the military junta in Niger is appealing to the Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé to act as a mediator.
Au cours de cette audience, nous avions saisi l'opportunité de rendre compte à son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République, de la situation au Niger. Une situation qui est calme, maîtrisée, malgré les difficultés. Dans cette situation, au-delà de l'engagement interne, il faut dire que
we have asked the President of the Republic of Togo to be a mediator to facilitate this dialogue with our various partners.
Et parmi ses amis, nous avons le Togo à nos côtés. Les dirigeants togolais et le peuple togolais nous ont manifesté la plus haute et la plus grande sympathie et aussi la contribution nécessaire pour supporter ces difficultés. C'est le lieu.
We are asking Togo, our brother country, in view of what it continues to give us, to be our guarantor in the framework of the agreement, framing the French military withdrawal, which is progressing and taking place normally.
Soit garant de cet accord. Nous avons surtout exigé que le Togo, notre frère, notre pays frère, pour toute la contribution que ce pays ne cesse de nous apporter, nous avons demandé à ce que le Togo soit notre garant dans cet accord. Nous avons aussi demandé au président de la République du Togo.
Well, so that's the demand from the military junta in Niger moving there to the Republic of Togo and asking Togo to be the mediator with the international community. Now, will the Republic of Togo be a strategic partner, not just for Niger, but also for the sub-regional body ECOWAS in bringing some lasting peace to the Republic of Niger? Let's hear from Dr. Ishmael Homovoice, who is an international relations expert, joining us now on this matter. Doc, thank you for spending some time with us. So we've seen the military regime there moving and sending its delegation to the Republic of Togo. Now they want to engage the international community. Let's start off with the kind of posture you're expecting from Togo in bringing a lasting peace to the situation.
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. It is important to understand that the regime have come to a point where it feels like it needs to now engage the international community because it is not possible to live in isolation forever. And more importantly, to have a mediator that will facilitate how French troops in Niger will withdraw from the territory and get their economic life back. So approaching Togo indicate that the Togolese may play a role that communicate to them that they are more neutral in terms of providing a neutral arbitration or mediation in the impasse between members of the ECOWAS group and the rest of and the Niger government, and of course also with the rest of the international community. So yes, the choice of Togo may have been informed by how Togo had conducted himself, continued to conduct itself throughout the unfolding tension between the ECOWAS group and Niger, and also between the Nigerian government and the international community. So I think that, yes, we are getting to a very interesting state in this whole drama, where we now see that, in fact, even within this sub-region, if economic sanctions are properly applied, they can have some effect. And as it is now, it seems that the regime is under some kind of pressure, and they are looking for a way to normalize at least economic relations so that they can get the economy back on track. Without the economy, very soon, popular opinion may be turning against them. So yes, it may take time for economic sanctions to work, but they do work. And as we are seeing in this instance, it seems that it is biting, and therefore they will need somebody who will mediate between them and the rest of the group. And of course, Togo looks a very interesting choice because of the kind of regime that is there. But then that again, that is how things work. If the regime conducted itself very well, that the person in dispute thinks that they can trust them. They can trust them to at least listen to their concerns and have their concerns on the table, that they will go in for that regime.
I see. But just, to touch on what we've seen in terms of the footage so far, you see there in the shots the defense minister of the Republic of Niger addressing the press, and he's doing that side by side the Togolese government representative, who happens to be the foreign minister of the country. Is that to suggest in any form that Togo is indeed willing to take on this leadership role by engaging the regime?
Yes, of course. It suggests that there have been some negotiations behind the scenes. There has been contact between the two sides, and therefore a lot has happened before coming forward to address the press. So it seems like even before the request is being made, they have already engaged the Togolese. So maybe they have had some positive signals from the Togolese government of the preparedness of that government to assist in the process. So yes, you don't just come for a press conference with another party and start making demands without going behind the scenes to negotiate the necessary things that you want. So even if this issue was not on board when they start, of course, they will still have engagement after the conference. So what it virtually means is that the Togolese government have been in touch with the Nigerian authorities, and they have been various issues that they have discussed, including the issue of French troops, including the sanctions imposed by the regional group ECOWAS, and therefore this conference is just part of that whole engagement that had taken place.
And is Togo not shooting itself in the foot, knowing so well that at the high-level meeting, Faure Gnassingbé was part of the group of West African leaders who authorized the military action in Niger? Why is he opting to talk now to this military junta, which, first of all, ECOWAS says it does not recognize?
Yes, ECOWAS may not have recognized that group, but then the reality is that the group has been in power, the group has been steering the affairs in Niger, and therefore somehow we have to engage them. To find solution to it will take negotiation. Indeed, ECOWAS itself has had interactions with them through various means, and of course the Togolese authorities are free to try and negotiate with them, to try and see how they can restore democracy, quote and unquote, in that republic. So I'm not sure that it is anything contrary that the Togolese authorities are trying to do. There's a problem, and if they can take the lead and have it resolved, then that so be it. Because at the end of the day, even if you go in militarily and it comes to stalemate, you will still have to negotiate, because as we said, the military solution will have no predictable end. And hopefully we didn't go in militarily, because perhaps after all the noise and all the noise have been made, they have realized that the military option is not a viable option. So what we have is the economic sanctions, which we said that should be allowed to work. And therefore, when the economic sanctions are working, the next thing that should follow is some kind of negotiation. So if the regime itself is engaging the Togolese authorities, trying to find some solution to the problems they are facing, that is welcoming, because we cannot completely cut off the Nigerian authorities and think that we'll have a solution. If you put somebody under sanctions, yes, there should be that pocket of way so that the person can engage with you. So I think that the Togolese authorities need to be commended for taking the lead, engaging this regime, trying to find the only time we will say that the Togolese authorities are going contrary to ECOWAS is if they allow their state to be used as an instrument to bridge the ECOWAS sanctions. But once they are not bridging the sanctions, once they are just engaging them to find how to mediate in this whole situation, then I think that they are on the right course. Of course, we don't envisage Niger to be under sanction for the rest of human life. So,
but the point the point about Togo being a choice for this Nigerian junta is quite strange, isn't it? Looking at the democratic situation in the Republic of Togo, concerns even in that country itself about the kind of democracy they are running. One group of, just a family, if you'd want to call them as such, and I mean, persisting in power for more than 50 years, or I mean, close to 50 years, if we can refer to it as such. That should be challenging and worrying, isn't it? Knowing that the ideals as to what we want to promote is about democracy. Why should it be the Republic of Togo?
Currently, I mean, ECOWAS accept that Togo is a democracy. The international community accept that Togo is a democracy, regardless of the fact that one family has been in power for so long. But we all accept somehow. We are all convinced that Togo is a democracy. And it is also about what the military junta in Niger think will work for them. It's not like there is a criteria of selecting the mediator. What happens is that it is that administration, that country that have acted in a way that has won the confidence of the military junta in Niger that they have approached. And of course, Togo as a mediator in a situation that aims at restoring democracy may look like an irony, because then we for some reason we are not so confident of the democratic situation in that country itself. But as it exists now, Togo is a democracy. Togo is have democratic institutions, and in comparison to Niger, which is fully fledged military rule. The Togo situation is still democratic, or at least they have the chance to express their choice during elections, no matter how we assume that those elections are flawed. But then, of course, there are elections, and of course, there's a parliament, there's room for civil society to operate and so forth and so on. So, in as much as we want a more democratically inclined regime, this is the regime that the junta has approached, and regardless of what nature of democracy operate there is immaterial at this moment.
I see. But how about the last leg of the conversation, which has got to do with the anti-French sentiment we've seen during that uprising in the Republic of Niger? Going to Togo would basically mean, moving in a spiral. It's as though they are never solving any problem, is it? Because the military regime there promised to tackle the issues surrounding their apron strings with the French. Looking at what's happening now, is Niger simply not going back to its past, I should say?
If you listen to the comment, I think that they are looking for a country that will mediate the withdrawal of French troops. So they are still insisting on the withdrawal of the French troops. And so if you are ever going to choose a regime or another country to do that, you also need a country that is quite close to France. You also need a country that can engage the French so that they withdraw peacefully. I think that the anti-French rhetoric is part of the whole attempt by the coup makers to win themselves public support. So it will not be easy for them to quickly change full circle and say they embrace France. So they will continue with that anti-Western, anti-French rhetoric as a way of winning public support, sustaining the public support that had greeted their capturing of political power. So it's not turning full circle. What has happened is that they needed somebody who will mediate between them and the French to ensure that the French troops will withdraw. So I don't think that the regime has changed course yet. They are still insisting on the French troops leaving, and therefore all that they are asking the Togolese counterpart to do is to mediate between the Nigerian and the French or the European Union to ensure that the French troops will leave the soil of Niger peacefully.
I see. And we wait to see what the outcome will be. Thank you for spending some time with us, Dr. Ishmael Olonvo. And now we talk about East Africa because they're taking the lead in enforcing the vision of the African Union's protocol on the free movement of people. Just last Thursday, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame announced that his country will now allow Africans to travel visa-free into his country, becoming the latest nation on the continent to announce such a measure aimed at boosting free movement of people and also boosting intra-African trade, which is the vision of the African Union. Well, Kagame's statement is also coming days after Kenya's President William Ruto gave a hint that his country will also do the same by the end of the year, and that's Kenya will become visa-free to all African persons by the end of this year. So what's accounting for this new wave of visa waivers that we're seeing, and what should the African continent do to sustain the trajectory which is being tipped as the solutions to the continent's economic challenge? So it's the reason for which we would like to bring in Yao Louis Afful, who is the Executive Director for the African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network. Thank you for joining us. First off, your thoughts on, how long it's taking all of these African emerging economies to embrace free movement of people. The AU protocol has been there since, except that it's not been given full flesh as we're seeing some African countries do now. What do you think is happening?
Thank you. Listen, I'm sure I'm enjoying this tonight.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. Yes, you mentioned right. There have been efforts since Abuja Treaty 1991 to look at the free movement of people. In fact, it was one of the most backdrop for the ASCFTA. Now, there have also been efforts to have one African passport. So far, few countries have been signatories. It was supposed to have activated about 2 years ago. Fine. Now, what is happening now is something I call the Memorandum of Agreement. Memorandum of Agreement. That's what we are seeing. You hear one country that have waived visa for this country, another say have waived visa for African country. Well, it is a good move because this memorandum, not memorandum of understanding, agreement. So, for example, I've also been told Ghana is Minister of Foreign Affairs is making effort to have a kind of visa agreement with the African Union. When that happens, what is going to happen is that country A is having a visa agreement with country B, and country B or country C might be a close neighbor to country A, and therefore the agreement, if it continues in that cycle, is going to affect country C, country D, and by the time we realize, the whole member states of the ACFTA is completely visa-free. So it is the same, it is the agreement, but they've taken a different approach. For example, in those days, before you go to Seychelles, you have to go to the African Union. Today, Seychelles have waived visas for about 12 countries. Now, the same applies to Mauritius. So you realize that if there's a memorandum of agreement between Kenya and the rest of Africa, how many countries are covered? About 54. Therefore, by the end of the year, or by the end of next year, you could see about maybe 25 to 30 countries having memorandum of agreement, which will cover the rest of the other 25 who just happen to be in the network. So I think that it's a good wave, but it is it is a new turnaround.
But why not do it wholesale, by the way? The African Union simply coming in to champion this protocol, broad stroke as we should call it, so every country signs on. Why is that difficult to secure?
To be honest with you, it's very difficult for countries to ratify or be signatories to regional agreements at the inception. But because this has become an economic attachment to it, you will be left behind. You'll be left behind if you don't play along, because the goods will move. And if the goods move, and you say you don't allow the person to follow their goods, you'll be left behind. So you realize that with some of the treaties or some of the agreements which they are reluctant to do, the countries themselves feel that, look, we have to take initial steps. For example, if you look at the after itself, some of the negotiations, countries that had ratified as of last year at the time, most of them were not up to even 40. However, if you look at the areas that they want to trade, 43 countries have ratified. So the question is, why haven't you ratified the overall agreement? But when it came to certain areas of trade, you have really ratified. So you realize that African Union is supposed to be a referee. He cannot bite. He cannot push it over. But you want the countries themselves realize that, look, we are at a disadvantage.
And indeed, that's the problem we're seeking to solve right now. Yao Louis Afful, Executive Director for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network, joining us. And wrapping up Connect Africa here on the Joy News channel, I'm Blessed to log on to myjoyonline.com for updates.